Jumping over to the transactions table, here we have the existing transactions that are on this site. You can do several filter options to filter the transactions that are being displayed on screen here. If you needed to make a change to a particular transaction, you can go in and edit the transactional data for those transactions. You can also do a search as well if you're searching for a particular driver, particular transaction number, things like that. Once the transactions are in the cloud, we have an ability to export those transactions out of the cloud into different file format types that we support. So if we were going to do an export, we can export as Excel or something similar like a ASCII CSV file, which would then open in Excel. So if we were going to do this, basically what we'd be doing is we would select our site. We'd select which accounts we want to go ahead and export. You can define what you would like to show up on the export. So in this case, we're going to say we're going to include all of our network transactions, manual transactions, things that have been exported. Here we could say export status. So do we want things that have never been exported? Do we want things that have been exported, or do we want everything? So in this case, we're going to go ahead and say we're going to export everything that's never been exported. Here we have the option of exporting the file format, and then here we can say what date range format we'd like it to be displayed on that export. We also have a time format, and then you could define the date ranges that you want to show up in that export. So for example, if we only wanted to export the data for this year, we can just export from here, and then you just select the export option here. Once you do the export, it's going to simply download to your PC in that file format that you've selected. We also have the ability to use a custom export. The custom export tab will allow you to define the fields that are going to show up on that export data. If we're going to use this custom export, we simply just need to check this custom. And when we do this, it's going to use this template for the custom. To define that template, we just need to come up here and select custom export. We're going to add a new custom export. We're going to go ahead and give it a name. We're going to select the file format again once that we want to use for that export. And then we're going to go ahead and define what fields we want to show up in the export data. For example, if you only wanted the driver's name, you could simply add the driver name. If you want that driver's transaction totals and say this is all the data that you wanted to show up on that export, you could simply save this template. In the previous page, you would go ahead and select the export, use custom. Then you'd be provided with an Excel CSV file that will only show the driver name and the transaction totals, or whatever fields that you defined here on that export. Jumping over to reports. Reports, once the transactions are in the cloud, we have the ability to generate a report on the existing data that's in there. So we can come in here and select one of the predefined reports that we have available in the cloud, and then you can define what dates you want to show up or what transaction dates you want to show up in that report. So we're going to go ahead and select the start date and an end date. Let's go back. And then you can define what cards you want to show up in that export or in that report. So let's just say we want all the cards, and then we could simply hit generate. And we're going to be provided with a PDF file here. So you can simply open the PDF, and now we have our report. At this point, you could email that or you could print it out, whatever you would need. We also have the ability to schedule a report or an export. Jumping over to the scheduler, here we have the ability to schedule an export or schedule a report. So we're going to simply define a name for this scheduled task. So we're going to say like daily report. And then here we can select the type of event, which we're going to do a report. We have the same reports available. So we'll go ahead and select the report that we'd like to generate. Now here we simply have a selection box of who we want to be emailed that report. So if we go ahead and just select a few individuals that we would like to get this report emailed to them, we'll just go ahead and check their boxes here on the right. Then we're going to have an option to define the same features that we have in the report generation process. So what date ranges do we want to show up on that report? So for example, if we want, say, the last 30 days to show up on the report. Here we're going to be able to select the card. If we're going to do all cards, we can simply select all. If you'd like to do a range of cards, you would select the starting card and then the ending card. Going down to the frequency, if you'd like to schedule it for a time in the future to automatically run once, you can simply select the date that you would like that to be performed. If you'd like to be a recurring, we would just simply select recurring here, and then we could say how often we would like it to run. So if we're going to do a daily report, we're going to go ahead and select every 1 day. And then we could select the date that we'd like to show up in that report as well. So we have to pick a day in the future. So let's go ahead and pick the day in the future, and we'll go ahead and hit save. So now every day at that particular time, it's going to automatically email that report out. If we'd like to go ahead and create another scheduled event, we can come in here. Let's say we're going to do a weekly export. Now we can select the export data. And then here we're going to define the same thing that was in the previous export. So we're going to select our site. We're going to select our accounts. We're going to select everything that we'd like to show up on that export. And then we're going to come in here. We're going to define what we want to export. So we're going to do everything that's never exported. We're going to do a CSV file format, and we're going to select the date and the time. Okay, we're going to do a relative date. We're going to do the last 30 days. Where once again, we're going to select who we would like to receive this emailed scheduled export. We're going to come down here. We're going to do the same. We're going to do recurring. This time we're going to do every 1 week. And now here we can define when do we want it to run. Do we want it to run, on Sunday, on Monday, on Wednesday? So let's just say we want it Monday, and we want to do it starting next Monday. And here we can define what time. So let's say at 9 a.m. on Monday morning, we're going to get our first scheduled report. We're going to go ahead and hit save. And now, so we have a scheduled daily report. We have a weekly export. And what's going to happen is when you get emailed these reports, you're going to basically have a link to download your report. So delivered right to your inbox, you're going to see a link. You're going to go ahead and click it. It's going to then save that file just like it did here below on your browser in your local PC. It's going to save that export or it's going to save that report. And those are going to allow you to automate the system, have the transactions delivered to you, so you don't have to spend a lot of time coming into the application to generate reports or exports. You could simply automate that process.